Welcome, everybody. I think we will go ahead and get started just to honor your time. Thanks for being here today. I see there was something in the chat asking about if it's being recorded. Yes, I am recording this, and so that can be available later. And we'll also record the duplicate session on the 26th. So if that ends up being a bit different or a better discussion, but we'll make those available. And for anybody who needs them. So thanks for joining today. Our plan is thinking this would take us about an hour. I think I blocked out an hour and a half in case we should have lots of discussion and questions, but we'll just see how it goes. But purpose of our meeting today, I should introduce myself. I'm Ron Russell. I'm one of our directors for specialized services in the agency. And glad to be here today with you. And our purpose is, I think all of you who got the invitation to these optional sessions are aware that there were some independent training options available out there. You know, people can go through this training on their own, and there are even some built-in video kind of functions, that type of thing. But we just wanted to make these times available for questions, and just if your learning style is better, just kind of going through it together as a group. This is a session for you. So kind of two parts to what we want to talk about today. The first one is giving you just a little bit of an introduction and tour of what you, I was going to say see up on the screen, but you don't now. Let me change that. Now I believe you should be seeing it. This is Iowa IDA information. Notice it says guidance, resources, and procedures. And then our newest acronym that we can all use is I3. Okay, so if you hear people talking about looking up some information in I3, this is what they're talking about. And you can see the URL is pretty friendly. It's iowaidainformation.org. We'll take you there. And this is a what is this? Most of you know that for the past many years, decade or more, I believe, there has been a state procedures guide that has been out as more recently as a PDF with a searchable table of contents, and that contained all of our state procedures for special education, along with a documentation guide that kind of gave examples of all the IEP forms that were out there, and some examples of the content for those types of things. So that's been out there for many years. So the Iowa DE, kind of in partnership with some AEA context, went a little bit of a different direction and wanted to change that documentation guide from just a PDF document to a more a live website. And so that's what you're seeing here. So this I3, or this Iowa IDA information, is intended to be kind of the place for all things special education. You know, where you go to get your information, including procedures. And so you're looking at the home screen here. What we want to do today is just, I'm going to use some materials that our Melissa Tandy is the project coordinator for this, and she's been working with the DE these last couple of years on developing this. And there's some standard materials.
I apologize that I'm calling from randomly numbers and stuff like that.
I'm going to, someone has their mute
you and Audrey, how she's
on.
doing.
I'm going to try to find.
The last time that we spoke. Oh, that's great to hear. We should be attending to.
If someone out there who's talking could put their mute on, that would help us. I'll see if I can find that. think we're
Oh my
okay.
God, Monday, are you
It might be
ready?
Joanna or Marina.
Okay, I think we're situated. Okay. Yeah, and that's great. Just others, you know, we definitely want to build in time for questions to come out, and I can kind of watch the chat, but also just there'll be times when you can chime in with questions. But if we keep our mute buttons on during the times that you're not talking, that just helps us with our audio. So that would be great. So I'm going to go right to where these training materials are. And if you're looking at the screen now, up in this right-hand corner, you can see site updates. I'm clicking there, and I'm going to site updates. And this section of I3 is where, well, the site will be updated. And it's where, kind of in the future, when we have these things called procedure changes or procedure releases, like you've kind of been used to hearing for the past number of years. Some of you are used to me, you know, coming out in the summer saying, hey, here's what's new and different with special education procedures. In the future, that's going to be kind of archived right in here. So I3 will be out there as the standard place to go, and then anything new and updated is going to land in the site update section. So for right now, you can see I'm going in there and I see Iowa IDA information I3 training, and I'm going to go right in there. And this is literally, I had mentioned to you in that email that this training was put out there as you know, as an option for people to do independently. And so I'm going to click right there, I3 training slides, and this is it. So you know, some of your colleagues may have gone in and done that themselves. You can still do that, but I'm just operating right from those slides, and we're going to kind of walk through them together, and hopefully have a little bit more chance than we might have for just some discussion and questions that might come up. So I'm on the on the first slide here, and so you all of course are welcome to. You can go right to the main site and find all this from yourselves. But Melissa Tandy, who's a project coordinator, she did just recently add this first slide, and some people wanted to kind of print or make copies of these training materials, and they were having trouble the way it was set up on the website. So there's some links here. If you like having some of this stuff on paper, there's some links here that would let you just kind of print them for your reference. So those links are there for you. And if you're going independently, there's a little intro here that tells you what's in the training. It suggests it's probably going to take about 45 minutes and can be independent or in a group setting. But let's just walk through this together. I'm going to, and during the training here, there will be these little links that are tutorial video. I'm going to play those. We're going to use it in that way, but then we'll just have more time for interaction. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with the first video.
Welcome. I would like to introduce you to the Iowa IDA information website, also referred to as I3. This site has been created to provide procedures, guidance, and resources for early intervention and special education in Iowa. Over the past few years, the Iowa Department of Education and the area education agencies have been moving towards one comprehensive special education system to support educators, families, and other stakeholders with the implementation of the required procedures outlined in federal and state rules and regulations. Iowa's comprehensive online system will include two distinct systems: the Iowa IDA Information and Achieve. The first system, Iowa IDA Information, provides information on procedures, guidance, and resources for both early intervention and special education. The information in I3 includes the information previously found in the AEA Special Education Manual and the Early Access Procedures Manual. I3 was officially launched on July 15, 2020. The second system is Achieve, the new IEP IFSP system, which is still in development. Achieve is being designed to allow for better family access, to provide expanded progress monitoring tools, and to improve the overall user experience for teachers and AEA staff statewide. Achieve is anticipated to be released for the beginning of the 21-22 school year. For additional information, click on Read More in the presentation. These are two distinct systems which will be closely aligned to ensure consistent information as IFSP and IEP teams develop plans for learners birth up to 21 years old in Iowa. When both systems are complete, Iowa's educational professionals will be positioned to provide the highest quality of support to students with disabilities well into the future. Let's take a closer look at the I3 system. The Iowa Department of Education, AEAs, and local districts have collaborated to develop I3 with input from educators, families, and key partners such as Ask Resource and the Family Educator Partnership. The I3 system has been intentionally designed to provide just-in-time access to key information, easy access for all interested parties, and a user-friendly features and search options. While most professionals in Iowa are accustomed to accessing the AEA Special Education Procedures Manual and Early Access Procedures Manual on the iowaidainfo.org site, this information is now all incorporated into I3. A quick and important reminder to everyone who has a downloaded copy of the manual and/or has a printed copy of the procedures manual, it is time to remove and recycle. You will need to reset your bookmarks on all of your devices as well. I3 provides access to procedures, guidance, and resources for early access and special education, all in one location. Key Iowa Department of Education documents and resources are now directly linked and embedded within I3 and/or have been moved to the resources section of I3. Please note that over the next year, additional DE documents will be moved into I3. For example, guidance on transportation issues in special education. If there are DE documents you commonly use which are not currently available in I3, please use the feedback option to let us know. The online format will provide the opportunity to easily and quickly update information if there are changes in rules, guidance, or procedures, as well as
that's okay.
tools to update users. It will also allow us to connect seamlessly to Achieve to allow for consistent messaging and ease. Reminder, Achieve is the new IEP IFSP system that's in development and is anticipated to be released in July of 2021.
Okay. By the way, quick check. Maybe I can see. Was that volume for the using the video clips? Was that? Can I see some thumbs up if that volume was okay for you? I'm seeing mostly thumb. I'm seeing maybe it's okay. Maybe I can crank that a little bit for the next one. But okay, I'll make that up a little bit for our next one. Okay, thanks for that feedback. All right, so just a little bit of an overview, and that was Melissa Tandy talking on the video, by the way. So I3 is where we have it right now. It's our resource. It's our new source for procedures information. Achieve is the name for the new IEP and IFSP system that is still coming. And you see or heard that that's targeted for the beginning of next school year, of the 21-22 school year. We're still hoping for that. I mean, it is being worked on. We know, along with many other things, there's been interruptions with COVID and so forth, but from what we hear and understand, that's still the target for that to be operational next year around this time. And so we may be getting together for some different kinds of trainings next year around this time as far as how that new system would work. But we're talking today about our just our procedure resources. And this slide that Melissa shared with you, just a reminder that this is replacing old guides. So if you have paper versions or if you have PDFs on your computer from the old versions of procedures, just kind of encouraging you to probably time to delete those and remove those so that you are making sure that you're accessing the most current information. All right. Yeah, and so just one comment. This is it's a pretty complete system, but it's meant to be improved ongoing as well. So Melissa, she did make the comment, if you're aware of other resources and things that seem to be missing, there is a feedback form on the website on i3 that people can use. So I think all of us may run into that this year. We might say, hey, where's that? I can't find this, or it seems like there used to be this flow chart. Where's that? And that's feedback we can kind of, either independently through the website or if you want to funnel some of those things to me, we can get that information to the developers, and things can be added, because you'll see a little bit later on there is a resource section that can also be documents that are kind of ancillary to the main guidance. So if you're used to getting things on the DE webpage, if you go there now, I think you will find that some of them are still lingering, some of them are gone because they're directly on here, but I think that'll be kind of an evolving process, and with the goal of being, this is the one place that you're going to go when you're looking for special education information.
Ron, there's a question in the chat box.
Thank you. Let me get my...
It's interesting that the procedures or the parent rights document has been a question to our little development group for a while, hasn't it, Ron?
Yeah, so let me find, I'm sorry, I need to get my chat open here. Thank you, okay. Interesting. Oh, and I apologize, that earlier comment, I see that the volume was a little bit low. We have that cranked up now, but okay, so the question from Kaylin, for the procedures, parent rights, does that mean that we are no longer giving out a paper copy at every initial 3-year IEP meeting? Okay, yeah, Zanji said, seems like that question has bubbled up a little bit around the state. Parents still need to receive, their procedural rights at all the same times. The way we've given them in the past, we need to keep doing that. But as most of you know, there was a new form last year, the consent for electronic communication, that can mean giving them the parental rights booklet electronically. So parents who have consented to receive information electronically, teachers, you can work with them and you can email them copies in that way, or you can give them a paper copy. And I think most of you know on that page A of the IEP, there's a place to code in, if parents have accepted a paper one or not a paper one. But so the answer is they need to receive it. It does not have to be paper if they've consented to receive things electronically. All right. Okay, so the intent of this little training is it's mainly navigation. We're certainly not going to cover all the content in this vast source of information, but it's more, helping you get a kind of an introduction of like, where would I find the stuff that I'm used to finding other places. So these are kind of the sections of the training that we'll be talking about, partly through these videos. So let's just jump in there. So the i3 homepage overview. Let's take a look at that video.
Let's take a look at the homepage of the Iowa IDA information website, otherwise known as i3. First, the i3 icon in the top left corner of the screen is the home button. Anytime you click on it, it will take you to the home page of the i3 site. Next, looking at the header across the top of the screen. On the left-hand side is a link to COVID-19 documents. On the right, there's a link to the IEP documentation guide, which will take the user to a PDF, and then a link to the login screen to the IEP IFSP web system. Below the header is a sticky bar with 3 primary areas. The first is early intervention, the second is special education, and the third is the resources. You will also see there is a small magnifying glass or the search button. Within early intervention and special education, you can see there is a drop-down menu where you can click on any one of these items to go to that page. Next, let's take a look at the body of the home page. First is an overview for understanding IDA and a brief summary and an option to click Discover Resources. Next, scrolling down the page, you will see there is a section for early intervention services for children that provides an overview statement as well as the option to click into information on evaluation and eligibility, IFSPs, or procedural safeguards. Users may select any one of those buttons to go to that section. Next is a section on special education services for those students who are ages 3 up to 21 years old. Again, there are 3 primary areas: evaluation and eligibility, IEPs, and procedural safeguards for parents. Below that is a section called Helpful Resources. The resources are divided up into the categories of educators, families and parents, as well as additional resources, which is primarily Iowa Department of Education documents. Continuing to scroll down the page, you will see there's a section about Iowa special education, including the option to select Contact Us, which will allow users to find their AEA and send a message directly to their AEA. Finally, across the bottom of the screen is the footer. Again, this is in the blue, so to help users see it. There are 6 different links embedded within the footer. One is the accessibility statements. Next is another option to contact us, a link to the sitemap, which we will explore in another video, press releases, site updates, and tutorial videos. Lastly, one important tool that users may want to consider and may need to use at different times is the translations. We have added the Google Translate option. If users would like to select a different language to translate the content of the website into a different language, simply click the button and all the other languages will appear. Once you select, it will change the content to that language. Those are the primary features of the home page of I3. Thank you.
Okay, so just a little overview of that front page there. And so, you know, if I jump back to the live page, and we can do that later, you'll just see that that was just kind of an overview to show you where the basic things are. A couple things. Notice how family resources are kind of highlighted there in the middle. This is, and with this being, you know, fully online and public, I mean, that is the hope that not only educators but families would find this site useful when they're looking for information on special education. And even the Google Translate has been added to maybe help families with that as well. So I think that's very good. All right, so that's just kind of a quick tour of what you're going to see in that home page. Let's talk a little bit more about structure and organization, and we'll watch the video for that as well.
Let's take a closer look at the structure and organization of the I3 system. The I3 system has been divided into 3 primary areas: early intervention, special education, and resources. When hovering over both early intervention and special education, users will see that they have 4 options. They can select the overview, evaluations and eligibility, IEP, or IFSP, and lastly, procedural safeguards. Clicking on any one of the items in the dropdown will take you to that page. Let's take a look at the early intervention overview. Simply click Overview, and you will be taken to the Early Intervention Overview page. There's a brief description of the role of early intervention in supporting families and children in the state of Iowa, followed by the three primary areas that we had talked about. One is evaluation and eligibility. Two is individualized family service plans. And three is early intervention procedural safeguards. These are the three primary areas also under special education. However, this would be IEPs, and this would be special education procedural safeguards. When thinking about where information will be located, users should consider that evaluation and eligibility include that initial evaluation process, the redetermining of eligibility while a child is receiving services, as well as the exit process. The IEP and IFSP section will include information that teams will need to access regarding the development and implementation of an IFSP or an IEP. Lastly, the procedural safeguards section includes information regarding the rights that parents have as related to special education and early intervention. To learn more and get information on any one of these areas, you may simply click Learn More, Explore, or Discover Procedural Safeguards.
Okay, so a little bit
Can
on
I
the,
add something real quick, Ron?
absolutely.
Yeah, so she mentioned there were three kind of main components across the top, the early intervention, special education resources. Since she's made the video, they've moved the site updates to that top area as well. And so when you go to the page, anything new that has been added to the page or any updates are going to be up there as well. You can see it says site updates.
Is everybody seeing that up there? I just went to the live site again. Yeah, that's so yeah, in the video she's talking about it being down here, which it still is, but yeah, that was some feedback that Melissa got that we might want to be going to that for a while. So let's put it right up top where we can get it. So that's great. Okay. Oh, and then again going back to the live site here. She pointed out, you know, these big broad sections, early intervention versus special education. Our audience today is primarily our special education folks that are, you know, serving school-age students ages 3 to 21. And the procedures we're going to talk about a little bit later are in regard to that. But this is the place for all information, including early access. So that's our AA staff that are serving our birth to 3 population. All their procedures are here as well. And I know Angie has been and will be connecting with those AA staff about navigating this as well. So it will be nice to have lots of stuff in one place. And I think once we get used to the organization, I think it's gonna be really good. Okay. Now this next slide is talking a little bit about options for locating information. And Melissa's gonna just demo a few different ways that we, you know, if we're going into the site and saying, I want to find blank, she's going to share a little bit some ways that we can find what we want.
I3 offers multiple ways to find information regarding early intervention, special education, and resources. To demonstrate the options, I'm going to show you how to find information on required IFSP team members. The first option would be to use the search, which is the small magnifying glass on the right-hand side of the sticky bar. Simply click the magnifying glass, type in what you are looking for, and hit enter. You will then see a list of the pages and resources that have the keywords that were searched. In this case, I wanted to know about teams. So I'm going to click on the Individualized Family Service Plan Teams. Simply click the title, and I3 will take you to the page on Individualized Service Plan Teams. That's one way to find information. Another way, let's go back home before we look at that way. Again, click on that icon in the corner. Would have been to look under early intervention and IFSPs. So I could have looked here, clicked on IFSPs, and then it would provide an overview, and then I could see right here, IFSP teams, click on that, and then it tells me what the IFSP team is, and then I could learn about the team roles. So again, I could search, I could use the sticky bar. Another option, if you're just not sure where might be the place to look, is to scroll all the way to the bottom of the screen, and you will see the site map down here in the footer. If you click on site map, you will see a list of all of the pages within I3. It's very similar to a table of contents or an outline of all of the information. So again, if we had been looking for IFSP team members, it would be in the early intervention section. And as you can see, there's information about evaluation and eligibility, and then IFSPs and contents, services. There it is, teams. Clicking on that will take me to the page on IFSP teams. A few other things that are important to think about as you're looking for information. You will see on the top of pages, there's a breadcrumb here. So as you start learning the system, we went from the home page to early intervention to IFSPs down to the team, IFSP team members. You can also always use the back arrow to go back to where you had previously been. And last but not least, remember that icon in the corner is always your home button. So as you think about finding information and how to search, remember you can use the search button, you can do the drop downs, or at the very bottom of the page is that site map that's very helpful, and you can simply click on any of those.
Okay. So different ways to locate information. I think, to be honest, I think each of us will probably all find our favorite ways to find information. I don't know yet. For me, I mean, I'm a little bit of a linear kind of a person, and so I maybe use that site map is kind of appealing to me because it does seem a little bit more like a table of contents. But I think as we all kind of dig into this a little bit, we'll find the best way that works for each of us. I was glad too, the back arrow, you can go back. Some websites are structured that doesn't work very well, but that works okay on this site. The breadcrumb is also a way to kind of go back and forth in a certain section, and that may be helpful to you as well. All right. Okay, now on I3, along with the main sections of, I guess, what I would call narrative, that's more like what we think of as procedures, there's also resources, lots and lots of resources, different documents that support our work, things like flowcharts and that type of thing. And we'll watch this tutorial video, but you can see they're coded by, again, some different areas. So you'll see some resources at the bottom, and Melissa will show them to you, but they may have one or several of these icons next to them indicating they're appropriate for what age groups or what types of groups. So early access, early childhood, special education, meaning ages 5 to 13, and secondary transition 13 to 21. So let's take a look at the video of the kinds of things you might find in that resource section.
I3 offers many valuable resources for families, parents, educators, and other stakeholders for both early intervention and special education. There are 3 different ways to easily access resources within I3. First is the top sticky bar with the resources button. You could click there. You could click Discover Resources right here under Understanding IDA. Or you could scroll down the home page to the resources section and read and decide if you want to look for educators, parents and families, or additional resources. Simply click on the button, for example, under Parents and Family, and click Read More. You will be redirected to the resources page. Once on the resources page, you will notice the information is located in 3 distinct columns: for educators, for parents and families, and Department of Education documents. You will also notice that within each of the columns, there are different headers to organize the information. For example, here under the Department of Education document.
That was me pausing intentionally for just a second here. I just wanted to point out, you've got the screen version here that's showing these resources. And if you look at this one over here that says Department of Ed documents, they have, I think they have done a nice job of kind of fleshing these out. But if you just look what happens to be on screen right now, on the right here, administrative considerations for the definition of a diploma, open enrollment, virtual schools, guidance on 4+ program or services, some information on alternate assessment. And some of those are the types of things that, if you're like me, sometimes in past years you were like, where? I know there's a document, and I think it's somewhere on the DE page, but I don't know where. It's those kinds of things, position papers, flowcharts, and so forth. So I think you'll see things landing in here that may have previously been in a hard to find spot. So I'm hoping that's going to work out well. But I just thought some of you might see some things on there and say, yeah, that's that. I know that's that thing that's out there, and I never knew how to find it. So the effort is to try to get everything in one spot. Still lots of information, but it is there. So we'll continue.
The first section is guidelines and memos on policy requirements. Then frequently asked questions and policy clarifications. And lastly, memos of agreement or of understanding. A quick way to get back to the top on this page is to click the Back to the Top button on the right-hand side of your screen. Simply click it, and you'll be taken back up to the top of the page. You will notice that users also have the option to filter information by the age of the student that they are looking for information regarding. For example, if someone is simply looking for early intervention resources, they can click on the blue circle above Early Access Birth to 3, and when you click on that, the resources below filter down to only those directly related to early access. To take the filter off, simply click on the icon again, and the list goes back to the full list. It's important that everyone realizes that the resources have been organized into these 3 categories. However, anyone can access resources from any of the 3 columns. They were simply organized based on who the resource was primarily designed for. For example, under parents and family, one of the resources that people find helpful is the Family and Educator Partnership pamphlet. Simply clicking on that will open up a copy of the FEP pamphlet that could be used. This provides valuable information to parents, but it would also be a great tool for an educator to print off and to share electronically with family members in preparation for a special education meeting. So as you can see, there are many valuable resources and many options of how to sort and locate the information that you're looking for to find resources.
Okay, as was mentioned earlier, there is a kind of a contact us feedback section, and let's look at that part of the website.
I3 offers users the option to contact their AEA and to provide feedback to the web administrator. First, let's look at how a user would contact their AEA. You would scroll down to the bottom of the home page to the section called About Iowa Special Education, which provides an overview of what special education in Iowa does. A user may click the Contact Us button, or you will see down here in the footer, which will appear on every page, a Contact Us button. We're going to click on Contact Us. That button will redirect the user to this page. If a user does not know the AEA that their child or learner is in, they could simply type in their zip code, for example, 52807, and hit enter. That will search and identify the correct AEA with the corresponding zip code. For that zip code, that's located within Mississippi Bend AEA. We have provided the address, the phone number, and the website. If a user would like to directly send a message from I3, they may simply add their first, last names, an email, which is required, select the AEA that they would like to contact, for example, Mississippi Bend AEA, select the age of the child, either 0 to 3 or 3 to 21, enter their message, and hit submit. One important note is for early intervention. We have also included, as you can see on the bottom of the early intervention overview page, contact information for the Iowa Family Support Network. There's the website and the phone number that would allow users to contact their AEA and other service agencies through the Iowa Family Support Network. The last option is also an important feature, is the option to provide feedback. So for that, I'm going to simply click on Evaluations under Special Education. The option to provide feedback is actually available on virtually all pages of the system. However, I just wanted to point out that typically it's located right underneath of the side navigation on a bar. It says, let us know about your experience on our site. Use the link below to submit your thoughts. Click on the box that says share your feedback, and you will be directed to a quick survey. Users are asked to fill in their first and last name, their email, whether they were able to find what they were looking for, and their suggestion and comment, and hit submit. These messages will be sent to the web administrator for review, and actions will be taken accordingly. The goal is always to provide the most enhanced and user-friendly site to meet the needs of all users. Thank you.
Okay. All right, updates and tutorials. Alluded to earlier, things like press releases, site updates, and we're gonna be talking about fairly shortly here some of the changes to procedures, and then tutorials are going to be built into the site. And so let's take a quick navigation of where that's going to be located.
To keep users updated on changes to the I3 system, as well as to provide tutorial videos, I3 has a built-in mechanism to access that information. If a user would scroll to the bottom of any page and look at the footer, so for example on the home page, scrolling all the way to the bottom of the page, you will see links to the press releases, site updates, and tutorials. When clicking on these, users will find key information. Let's click on Site Updates. As you can see, the site updates include a summary of each article that's been added and the information that's available here. Users may click on the title and simply go to the article, or you can see all recent information and updates are listed here off to the side in the right-hand navigation bar, starting from the first entry, which was the I3 press release, to the most recent, which was the early intervention procedural safeguards. I'm going to click on the early intervention procedural updates for July 20. As you can see, there's a date of when the information was posted, which would be important for users to notice, as well as then the article itself, which was on the procedural updates. There were 3 areas that you can see are highlighted here. Also, we've added an option for users to download a PDF copy of it if they would need it. As we look at that navigation bar, I would also like to point out to you, as you can see, the updated are in chronological order from oldest at the bottom to newest at the top, or users could search by category, depending on what area they're looking for. The other thing that I would like to point out is the tutorial videos, which can be accessed here in the categories or on the footer. Currently, once this training is released, there will be links to each of the individual videos, and we'll continue to add tutorial videos into the upcoming year. Down the road, we hope to have an email subscription service where users could request an email when additional videos and updates are added to the system. Thank you.
And I hope that, I hope that does happen. That would be, to me, that would be a great feature if there was a subscription kind of a thing, meaning where you would get an email if something new was added. If and when that happens, I'll be sure to kind of send information out to let you guys know that that's available. Okay. Bookmarking. Okay, there is a method of kind of saving commonly used sections, because if there, as a quick reference for you, to help you maybe if you have to go back again. So let's look at what that process looks like, how you can customize some bookmarks for yourself.
Let's take a minute and talk about bookmarking. Not only the home page of I3, but also key resources and pages you may use frequently within I3. To bookmark a web page, simply click on the star and you'll be prompted to add a bookmark. This is the title. I'm going to leave that as it is so I know it's the home page. And then I'd like to create a folder of I3 pages. So I can simply click on More, create a new folder, and I'm going to call it I3 and hit Save. Now, this page is saved right within my I3 folder for bookmarks. I also know that I get many questions about procedural safeguards, specifically on prior written notices. So I think it would be helpful to consider saving some of those pages and resources you use often. So now I'm going to go to the prior written notice page. And once I get to the prior written notice page, I'm going to bookmark it. And when I click on the star this time, it'll ask me to bookmark it. It'll give me the title. And as you can see, it puts it in the I3 folder. And I simply hit Done. Now, anytime I'd like to find the prior written notice page quickly to help a staff member when they're asking questions, I can simply click into my bookmarks, find the website, and look at it, and/or simply share it out of my folder by sharing the URL. While you're thinking about your bookmarks, don't forget to take a minute to delete your previous bookmarks to the special education and/or early access procedural PDFs, which were previously found on the Iowa IDA info.org website. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Now we're gonna so that's really the basics of that the training that was getting into what's on the site, what do the sections look like, how to navigate. Then we're going to jump into the Part B special education procedures updates, meaning some of the things that are new and changed this year, and that will include some things that I think probably are on all our minds as far as how we're documenting some things that may become virtual for students with our COVID situation and so forth. But before we jump there, let me just stop. I've been, between the videos and me, a lot of talking here. Let me just pause. I mean, are there any burning questions that you guys may have? I can just go to the live site here, or anybody have a question just generally about the site and what's there? Feel free to jump in and ask that. I'm using my wait time here, but I have a hunch there's going to be maybe more questions when we get in a couple of these procedural changes, because there are a few of them that might be a little muddy. I know it's hard to imagine, but all right, well, okay.
Hey, Ron, just to be sure, you're not really covering the early intervention procedural changes, right?
Right.
They're minimal, so, okay.
Yep.
So the rest of the time will be more for Part B folks?
Yes, we're gonna walk through those.
I know there are a few Part C folks on there, and so have the gift of time.
Okay, thanks, Angie. All right, I am going to, I'm going to take the link that's built right into this PowerPoint. But the section that you're looking at right here, documentation release notes 2021. And there's a summary of changes. And then there's even you're seeing right now this download the update in PDF format. There's a document, if you want to save that as a PDF document or even print it. We're now getting into the what's new and different, section of our time together today. But there are some training slides that go along with that, and we're going to use that just to kind of walk our way through the changes. Again, the same slide that we saw previously. There's a way that if that helps you, if you like that these were put into like a printable format, so there's links to that if you'd like to. But let's just dive into some of these changes. And I'm gonna jump pretty quickly here, because this is really, these first two slides really talk about what we just talked about, the fact that a lot of our information has been organized into I3. But what are some of the changes? This is the one that, if you've been getting drowsy, maybe this one might wake you up, because this is all of our minds, I think. What to do about, we have COVID, and we have some virtual things going on, or potential for that. There's built into this presentation, there's lots of links with more information for you, but I'm going to pull up the page itself so that you know what I'm talking about. So if you've heard people buzzing about the IA page, what are we all talking about? Well, most of you remember in IEP, there has been a page I that's been an additional information page. It looks kind of like this one at the top. It just says additional information. And that was just a blank page in the web IEP where you could put any information that didn't fit anywhere else. Okay, and we've used that for a variety of things over the years. And now with our COVID situation, there is a unique version of that IA page that's been put into there as an additional form. And there's different ways that you can access that. And it looks like this, okay? And so it says at the top, discuss the following and document IEP team decisions in preparation for occasions when virtual hybrid learning is necessary. Consider other questions as relevant to the unique circumstances of the individual. So, as we go into this new year, we know that schools are somewhat all over the board. Some are jumping right in with regular classes, and some will implement their IEPs based on Page F. They'll be doing, business as usual, along with, I'm sure, a lot of universal precautions and using PPE and so forth. Other schools are doing different things, whether it be virtual, hybrid, alternate day schedules, and we also have the potential for things could change. Some schools that are face-to-face right now, or will be starting that way, that could change down the road if the numbers change with COVID. Other districts may decide to shift more to virtual or hybrid instruction. So lots of things that can happen. And so this page is intended to document what will we do, how will we handle it for our kids if we go virtual or hybrid. Okay, and so there's a series of questions and prompts to be completed. So let's just kind of walk through those. Describe the general education services and settings for virtual hybrid learning. What accessibility needs are unique to the student for virtual hybrid learning? And so, frankly, that's going to be even getting into the, this student will need to access their computer for virtual learning. Do they have any unique access needs, beyond maybe what may be a district laptop or something like that? So thinking that through, particularly for some of our kids with complex needs. Next question asks us, what other needs of the student are unique to the virtual hybrid setting and his or their individual circumstances? This next one, to me, is kind of a biggie, and one that I think will take IEP teams a lot of, will make them ponder and think carefully through this. How will services on Page F be prioritized, adapted, and delivered to the student to make progress in the virtual hybrid learning? What, if any, services will not be delivered in the virtual hybrid learning? Okay, so before we talk more about that, the intent is that no matter what's happening for the student, Page F should stay the same as it is right now. In other words, Page F should reflect what services are recommended for that student during normal times. Okay, if we did not have to think about shifting to virtual or hybrid, Page F should reflect that. This Page I is supposed to be, and this is my words, but I think the words kind of fit, kind of a contingency plan. Okay, if we go virtual or hybrid, how will we handle that? Okay, and I think lots of teachers are asking, I even have some emails in my queue today about, what do I do about Page F? How are we going to get these minutes in? This page is going to specify that, and that's going to be on a case-by-case, very individualized basis. But that question that I just read gets into prioritization, because we know that for some students, or for many students, delivering that SDI and the services and supports that are on Page F, at minimum, will be done very differently in a virtual setting, right? So even for our kids with mild disabilities, let's say a mild reading disability, maybe they have a certain methodology. Maybe the teacher is using corrective reading or a really great reading or a different program like that. And Page F might say 30 minutes doing it this way. That may look differently. That probably will look different in a virtual setting. This page is where the team can think through how that will look differently. And notice it also says, what if any services will not be delivered? Okay, so there may be, for some students, this prioritization saying, this is going to be dramatically different if we have to go completely virtual. What will that look like, and how are we going to adapt? Okay, So, I mean, just to throw out one example, every kid is unique and different, but you know, imagine a student with a severe or a profound intellectual disability, and they're going to be going completely virtual. This question will really have to be thought out. Are there certain things that we're going to prioritize that the teacher will be able to offer virtually? Are there some things that will be maybe de-emphasized? Okay, so there's that question. The next one, what goals are prioritized by the IEP team, and how will progress monitoring for these goals be adapted for a virtual hybrid setting? That's big on people's mind too. How do I do the progress monitoring? So potentially thinking about alternate ways to do that. Again, the recommendation is leave your page F alone. You know, page F should be what we normally do. Page I will be the contingency plan. And then what additional considerations are important to implementing the IEP with these adaptations? Okay, so that's the form. That's the questions. The intention of this form is that one will be completed for each and every child. Now that doesn't mean that you should panic and say tomorrow I'm going to host 40 IEP meetings, because we know you can't do that. The thought is for those students that you know are going to be going virtual, for example, if the parent has chosen remote learning because of a health concern, if that's the case, then you'd of course want to go through these considerations sooner rather than later, because that's going to be your plan. For other students that maybe are having their normal learning right now or next week, the thought is that there still should be a page I developed as that plan, because if something changes in a month and that child's school goes all remote, what will you do? So the intention is to have a page for every child, but some of those are going to be naturally occurring this fall. And there's like I said, there's many links here. I'll pull up one of the links here. There is some guidance on how to access that page, because it's a little bit different depending on, it's a little bit done differently depending on your situation. So for example, if you're looking on screen now, if the IEP was open as of July 1st, 2020, the prompts will not appear on page I. But then, so in other words, if there was one of those open IEPs, we have some situations where they were left open, you know, due to COVID. But then a form I can be created and the additional forms and pulled in. Okay. But then there's other scenarios. If you're creating a new IEP, the prompts will appear there. If you're amending an IEP, the prompts will appear there. So this page just lays out different ways that you might have to access that page I, depending on how that child's IEP was left. But it is a form that also lives in additional forms, so it can always be pulled in as an extra. Let's see. And you can see I'm looking at just notes down here as a reminder to myself. This has been emphasized at some of these state level discussions. Dates are important. So an IEP team should include the date of when on page I about when this was added. This is, if you search through the Q&A document here, you will see that it is recommended that when a team creates a page I, there should also be a prior written notice sent to the parents. Why? Because we're proposing a potential change to their plan. On the other hand, this form is going to be done in different kind of situations. It won't always be done as a review IEP. It won't always be done as an amendment. It is a form that could be pulled in as a separate form in the same way that we've done that with behavior plans and things like that. But the recommendation is dates are important. You know, we want to know when an IEP team fleshed out this plan. And obviously parents need to know for some of your kids, it may be a formal meetings with parents there as IEP meetings. In other cases, it might be you fleshing out this plan and then making sure the parent is aware of that by sending changes in a prior written notice. Okay. So that's page I. I'm going to take a breath and pause for a bit here. What questions come to mind? Brand new stuff here. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ron. I have a question. This is Emily Ramsey. So if the team decides to write a plan where maybe a goal would be different in the virtual plan versus in person, it sounds like that goal and the progress monitoring should be done on the iPage. So does that mean there won't be like a progress monitoring graph for new goals that are created for virtual plans?
If so, Emily, you're saying if there was a brand new goal created instead of the existing?
Yeah, I'm thinking like if a student had a behavioral goal that was monitored some way in the brick and mortar learning, but maybe it wasn't quite as appropriate or couldn't be done in a virtual environment. And so there needed to be a change to that goal or the way that we're doing it. How do we reflect that and make sure we're still monitoring progress?
If you were writing a brand new goal, I would say that sounds more like an amendment where you would go in and you would add that goal. But if you're using the same goal, you say we're still targeting the same skills for this student, but the instruction was gonna look different, which it would virtually, and the gathering of data was gonna look different. That could be described in page I, but then data could still be collected in the existing goal. Does that make sense? You know, and I can kind of picture, for example, like the phase line indicating COVID happened and we changed some things. Does that make sense? So if you're prioritizing or maybe adapting your instruction and progress monitoring for a goal, that can be described in page I. But if you were proposing something brand new, that sounds more like an amendment where you would add that goal.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Emily, this is Christy, Ron. Along the same lines, I'm up here with my behavior teacher, and that same thing with the behavior, because we use a lot of behavior checklists, and we have the behaviors we're targeting and the different, subject areas, and they're rated on that, and that's how we monitor our progress. I'm trying to think of how we would do that in a home setting. And with some of them, the parents aren't even going to be home.
Yeah. How to implement the behavior plan at home. Yeah.
Well, how to even progress monitor if the parent, we're not getting those. I mean, my behavior teacher will be on with them a certain time every day and observe them virtually, but I'm just trying to figure out how we get accurate, valid data reflecting if progress is being made in those behavioral areas or not.
Yeah, huge challenge. So the teacher's going to be on daily with the student, targeting, so basically, Christy, you're saying doing behavior SDI, right? In a new and unique way. I think, the reality is, other than data you could collect on how that student was behaving while on the computer, yeah, we would be relying on parents. That's the truth. So it probably would be getting some kind of data collection tool to the parents where they could report for you. But yeah, I'm totally with you. We're going to have all kind of situations where, like you said, parents may not be home. We're going to make our best efforts to partner with them and get that data. But I think, kind of what you're saying, I mean, some of those, when I think about these page I questions, this one that I pointed out, what services, what are we going to prioritize? What are we going to adapt? What are we going to, are there some things we're even not going to do? Considering this, I mean, we're in a, we're kind of an emergency state if we're at the point where kids cannot go to school. So I think some of those dilemmas that you're describing, Christy, probably would just be described on page I, and we'd move forward the best we can.
And collect the best data that we could during the time of that SDI.
Right, right. And part of the reasoning for Page I is let's talk about it and let's do the very best we can for our kids. There's also a part of Page I that is, in a way, is kind of for lack of a better word, kind of a protection for schools, because I mean, a lot of teachers are worried about, well, my Page F says I'm supposed to do this and this and this and this. And that would look a lot different. But Page I is, to me, kind of a contingency plan saying, we're in a state of emergency. Here's how we're going to do it as best as we can, and have a record of that.
Okay, so we have a parent right now, and she is at work during the day. And during the elective, when we were doing the elective virtual learning, this little girl was just really struggling with, and so the behavior teacher also has a reading goal, and they decided to prioritize reading because her behavior was very different. She was way naughtier at home than school. So that information, like, it just doesn't match what we see with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to prioritize the reading instead. Well, now this mom, up and down. I think the two teachers that were working with her were very accommodating during this time, above and beyond, going at later hours, et cetera, et cetera. This mom said, I'm just wondering, like, what we're going to get. This mom said, if we go to virtual learning, because we're starting tomorrow, Glenwood's going to have a fight on their hand. And if we go to hybrid, which we don't have a plan yet for, she will be going the whole time. I mean, are we going to get a lot of parent, and where are we with our covering our you-know-whats? I mean, if it's a policy of the, I mean, what rights do parents have at that point? Like, we're going virtual for 2 weeks. We had an increase in cases and we're shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to review in 2 weeks.
So you're saying, Christy, if a parent says, what do you
Oh,
mean?
no.
I'm sending my kid, that type of thing?
Yeah. She's like, no, you're going to have a fight.
Yeah. That's and that's the thing. We have both sides. We have some families that feel that way, they're thinking, why in the world would you close school? And we have other families that say, why in the world would you consider opening school?
Yeah.
So it's well, we all know, I'm not, it's a huge dilemma. I think for that scenario you're describing, the families will have to follow the
But
policy.
legally,
Yeah.
But legally, we're doing what, I mean, actually, we did above and beyond for this kiddo. And mom still was, one of those that it's never enough.
Right.
And I'm stressed out because she was an essential worker and I don't have time to do this. And when I get home.
Right.
So, but I mean, no, you're going to send your kid to school with nobody here. I mean, I guess I don't know.
Right.
what fight she's going to put up.
Yeah. No, that's a, and I'm sure that's just a lot of emotion. She, that parent wants the best for their child and is just really concerned about it. But I guess the best that I can say, Christy, is, I mean, I think Page I really is where we're laying out. Here's what we're going to do. It's the best we can do, and here's why. Here's why, kind of a thing. So to me, that is a little.
And what if parent disagrees with it?
Well, that would be a parent disagreeing with an IEP implementation plan. So, parent, that's a great question. A parent could exercise their parental rights and they could file a complaint. I mean, that's the reality. That can and probably will happen at some point. In other words, if a parent says, you're not giving my child FAPE, they can exercise their parental rights, and we would go through that process, a painful process, because the child's school might say, we're closed and we're doing the best we can. But if that happens, we'll go through those procedural steps, or that could be a mediation situation. When a parent does make a complaint like that, they're asked to first do mediation even through one of our AA mediators. So
Yeah.
I would say that's what we would do.
Okay. Thank you, Ron.
You bet.
Hi, this is Jerry. I have a question.
You bet.
So obviously during amendments, if we do an amendment, we do a PWN. If we do a page I, just say we do a page I just to, plan ahead, do we need a PWN?
Yes. And that was a question that was floating out there. If you look in that Q&A that's linked here in the presentation, it does say yes, because you're making a change to the IEP. It is true that it's a little bit weird because we're pulling a page in, in some cases outside of a full meeting, but the recommendation was that the PWN is a good way of saying, yep, parents, we've notified you. This is happening and we've notified you. So that is recommended. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Well, okay. I'm sorry. Was there a question?
Yeah, Ron, this is Tracy. I just wanted to clarify, are we required to have a meeting for all kids then, or can we make the amendment with the PWN for the iPage only and not hold a meeting?
That it can be done outside of a meeting. It can be.
Okay.
So yeah, and we know that is a little bit weird, but it was designed that way where you can pull it in as an additional form. But yet it was still recommended that the PWN is a good way to document that something is happening.
Thank you.
You bet.
Ron, will you share the slideshow with us?
The one we're using?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right in there. It's in I3. It's available to the masses. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, I grabbed it right from that updates part of the I3 site. So it's all in there, including those links that lets you print if you'd like to, and you bet. So that's all available for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, homeschooling. And believe it or not, part of this change was going to happen before COVID, but it plays right into it because we know that parents have some choices about what they're doing this year. But let's talk about changes in homeschooling related to special education. And I'm watching my time here, folks, and I'm sorry I kind of underestimated the time here, and we're approaching an hour and a half here. I'm going to do the best that I can if you would hang in there with me. Okay, so when a parent informs the district that they plan to do homeschooling, the change here is there's kind of an emphasis on that the AA and the LEA is supposed to really make efforts to explain to the parents what are the options. So what are the options for dual enrollment and for special education? And this sentence is the new thing. The change now is, so we know that when parents say, I want to homeschool, they can essentially walk away and say, I don't want to do school anymore, I'm going to home educate. And there's that letter that, the director of special education, David Van Horn, he would have to approve that for a student with an IEP. But essentially parents have a right to do that. But if the parent says, I'm going to homeschool and I'm not dual enrolling for special education, meaning I'm not going to send my child for at least some special education, they have effectively revoked special education. And so that goes into the system as a revocation. And so if that child goes to homeschooling and then next fall they come back, if that happens, then it's a situation, and I know some of you are going to cringe, we start from scratch with the full evaluation. So that is the change in conception. And so there is, I don't know, you're excited, a form to help us on this journey. So if a parent says, I'm homeschooling, and that child has an IEP, they have a disability and special education services, the intent is to engage the family, saying, we want to have a meeting, we want to talk about this, and we want to make sure you understand all of your options. So this form kind of walks through the different options for competent private instruction for homeschooling. It talks about the steps that are taken. So it's kind of a walk through pardon me, of options. But it gets into this idea that if your child is not going to dual enroll, meaning that they would to receive some special education services, they would be exited as a revocation. And at the bottom here, there's an acknowledgement that the parent understands that. So most of you know that, like, when parents would revoke rights to special education in the past, saying they want to stop, it was supposed to be in writing. Well, this form can kind of fulfill that purpose. But and so you can see here, if they're going to homeschool, they might check the first box saying, yes, I want to homeschool, but I also want to.
Right. I need a dolly and I have stuff I need.
And they want to dual enroll. And so just a reminder, when they dual enroll, that means they a new IEP is written saying, what will the special education look like during dual enrollment? If they say, no, I want nothing, the second checkbox basically says, I don't wish to dual enroll, and they're effectively revoking special education. And so, and it says, if I change my mind a week later or a year later or 2 years later, that means that, and I re-enrolled my child in school, we would have to look at eligibility again. Doesn't mean that wouldn't happen, but it gives us more procedural steps to go through at that point.
Ron, there's a question about preschoolers, and does this apply to preschool?
Thank you. Let me no, because there is no homeschooling. There is no homeschooling for preschool. Preschooler until a child is of obligatory attendance age, kindergarten, there is no homeschool. Preschool is voluntary, so it does not. So, all right. Okay, sorry, I got down. Okay, so if parents plan to dual enroll for special education services, there's a form, completing that form and the acknowledgement form with a signature saying the parent understands what they're doing. An IEP would be developed to describe it. And there still is that director approval for dual enrollment, meaning that they're going homeschool, but they're dual enrolling. So that would be the same process that we've used for quite a few years, where David Van Horn would review the IEP and have to do an approval. And then there's a Form A. Many of you know that's the homeschool application to the district saying I wish to homeschool. And on that form, there's a checkbox where they say, and I'm asking to dual enroll. Now they may ask to dual enroll for band, science, or whatever also, but it's the special education services that we're dealing with in terms of whether there's a revocation or not a revocation. And then if the parents do not want to dual enroll their child in special education, there's the procedural steps there. The change in conception is that they effectively revoke their consent, and we'd exit that student with a PRC code, which stands for parent revoke consent. And then the issue there is that that student is thereafter treated as a gen ed student unless there was an evaluation to bring them back in.
There are a few more questions there, Ron.
Yes. Let's see. Okay, Jane is asking, if homeschooling with dual enrollment, dual enrolled option is chosen, can you talk more about the services needed for FAPE? Is only SDI involved, paraservices, other supports and services? Okay, so then what does dual enrollment look like? That is a complicated question, but it dual enrollment, the conception is that, primarily I am a parent and I'm choosing to home educate my child, but I want my child to come in for certain things. Maybe there are things that I don't feel qualified to teach, So in special education, basically and that's part of the reason for this forum and this desire to make sure we engage families when this happens, when they choose to homeschool, because when we talk to them, what are you asking dual enroll for? So what that IEP looks like depends on, that's going to be a joint IEP team decision. It's going to look different. So, Jane's question might be thinking about like, what if you have a student who has a severe intellectual disability and they're getting, a full day of programming in school? What would dual enrollment look like? I would have a hard time, coming up with the conception of what that would look like, but it could be negotiated. So basically the IEP team negotiates what that looks like. I would say the most common scenario we've seen in the past might be I'll just give one example, student with a mild reading disability. The parent says, I don't want them, I want to homeschool for whatever reasons there might be. And maybe we'd see that child coming in 30 minutes a day for special reading instruction. They dual enroll for SDI reading. And you can see how that might kind of make sense to the school team. But what does it look like? I think depends, that the IEP team will negotiate that. And I think also David's approval of that kind of plays into that too. In theory, technically, if David saw what the parent was asking and he felt like that was inappropriate, it could be denied. That doesn't often happen because in Iowa, there's really a strong right to homeschool. So I hope that helped, Jane. It's basically has to be talked about by the team.
There were a couple questions before Jane's, Ron, and then one after, I think.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm going back here. Okay, preschools. Okay, and forgive me, folks, for running over time here. Well, hang on with me if you can. Okay, Laura asks, is this form done after David approves a homeschool request? Good question. No, to me, it would be before. So it'd be the parent says, I want to homeschool. The school and AA say, okay, come on in, let's talk about it. They would go through the options, and then the parent would say, I think I'm going to dual enroll. Check the box, sign it. And then they would have applied to the district saying, I want to dual enroll for special education. And then there would be an IEP proposed. And to me, then it would go to David, because then David could see like, oh, here's what they're planning to do. And he could kind of make that determination if he had any concerns about that. So the answer is before. Oh, okay, Emily, should this form be filled out for both CPI and IPI? Good question. Only for CPI, because for IPI there is no dual enrollment. There is no dual enrollment. Yeah, if a parent chooses, IPI stands for independent private instruction. In short, it's very ill-defined and confusing, but it kind of means I want to homeschool and I'm walking away, and you can ask me if I'm homeschooling and I will say yes. That's my version of it. There's not a whole lot of strings attached, not a whole lot of accountability, but the answer is no. This form only applies to CPI because it has to do with dual enrollment.
Ron, I have a quick question about that. This is Brooke. I'm looking at the form and there's 2 check boxes. I don't know if you can go back to that slide, but
let's go back, because Brooke, I was just considering about backing off on that. So let's
there's a second. The second box says, I will be homeschooling and do not wish to dual enroll, and that would kind of lend itself towards CPI and IPI. It looks like you would want to fill the form out maybe in any homeschool scenario.
I believe you're right now. I don't think it doesn't use the.
Yeah, it doesn't use CPI and IPI terminology, but it's with dual enrollment or without.
Yeah, hold that thought, and I might ask a few people about that because I think that probably is right. It's not mentioning IPI because there's no possibility of dual enrollment, but on the other hand, if someone says I'm doing IPI, then you're automatically revoking, right? Essentially, and so I think the answer probably, I think I'm going to change that to yes. But let me I almost wish that acronym IPI was thrown in there, but so let me ask a few people about that, and I think I'll shoot out an email to the masses when I get an answer to that. But I think the answer probably is yes, because it really is. It's using that broad term homeschooling. Actually, no. We're gonna go with yes, because at the top here it does talk about it says it lists CPI and IPI at the top here. So the answer is yes. Yeah. So we know that, you know, if they say IPI, then there's no IEP, right? There's no IEP, and that's part of the discussion. But then if they were going IPI and they understood what they were doing, they would still sign. So yes, you're right. They would still sign this form, then saying they're revoking.
Ron, this is Kelly. We
Kelly.
have some preschoolers here that are not coming to school, and the parents do not want virtual, and they are on an IEP.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to exit them, or what do we do?
Okay. Well, we know. I mean, they're not obliged to attend school because they're not of a mandatory attendance age. But they have an IEP, for example, for like an early childhood special education programming.
Because if we kept them on the rolls, they would be in count, but we're not having, you know what I'm saying? We're not serving them.
Mm-hmm. It's an excellent question. And to be honest with you, Kelly, as we, you know, it's one of those categories when we get closer to count, you'd probably have someone like me saying, you know, is that kid supposed to be on count? Hold that thought. I'm gonna make a note. That's a question I want to find out. Yeah, because part of me thinks we would exit them, but I wouldn't want them to lose their eligibility because they're pausing for a more, you know, kind of a medically related reason. But with it not being a mandatory program anyway, a district program, they wouldn't be obligated to offer a virtual program, which the parent might not like anyway. I'm going to find out, Kelly. It's a great question.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah. Okay. All right, jumping ahead.
Sorry, this is Sandy. You just said something that perked my interest that we've been trying to figure out. I thought I heard you say that with preschool not being mandatory, that the school would not be obligated to provide virtual. Is that what I heard?
That would be my best understanding. Yeah.
And that might be different than David's take on it, so we probably need to get.
Yeah, I think it.
Let's add that to the questions.
Okay.
It's definitely not a homeschool situation because it doesn't apply to preschoolers. But yeah, we've had some conversations with David, and I've had conversations with him and Sandy and him and a couple other people, and it's very confusing.
Yeah. So yeah, and you're right, Angie. We've probably had disproportionate amount of questions in the preschool level, even more than K-12. I think that's very true. So I'm note to self here too. So the question of well, we know they're not required to attend. So I'll dig into the question of, like, you know, what about exiting? Do we do that? But then the question of, okay, so then my question I want to verify is if so for example, what if a preschooler going to a district sponsored program, if the parent said, my child has a medical issue, and I am requesting that they attend remotely. I just said they wouldn't be obligated, but I may be wrong on that. So that's what I want to find out.
Well, and it may matter, it may make a difference whether it's a voluntary program, the voluntary 4-year-old program.
Right.
You know, which has a requirement of 10 hours. You try to get that as much, you know, as best you can, and so forth. The state early childhood task team, if you will, team is meeting this afternoon, but I don't know that this is one of the questions that's being asked. I'll let Pam Elwood know the question and see if she can, because they're talking about return to learn as well. So
okay.
I'll also check with her and see if she has guidance from the state. So far, I've struggled getting guidance from the state on preschool questions.
Okay. Okay, but that's a good one too, and you're right also that, I mean, you have some programs that are district sponsored with that funding stream, you know, like the 4-year-old programs, and then you've got, you know, you got your Jack and Jill preschool, or just, you know, a private entity, and I'm feeling like they probably wouldn't have an obligation, but it's going to depend on, it probably is going to depend on the funding sources. So, okay, we'll dig into that one a little bit more. Okay, I think we covered that one as best we can. Codes, okay. So the exit codes that sometimes confuse us. There used to be, this is codes in Web IEP. There used to be a code CPN that was exiting, and if a student went to homeschool and we exited them, we would use CPN. And they remained eligible, right? And so that code has been retired. And so we know that from what we said earlier, if a parent says I'm homeschooling and I want no dual enrollment, then they're revoking. And so this PRC code would be how they would be exited. And even though we're not happy about it, or we may not be happy about it, that means they would come back in, would reconsider their eligibility status. So that's just what we need to know, that code is in there. Okay. In the eligibility determination worksheet, the EDW, the place in Web IEP where you know, that kind of tracks that we meet our 60-day timeline. This is just a note that there is a new category, public health emergency, COVID can be added. So if we miss our 60-day timeline, that code can be put in there for ones that happen because of COVID. For what it's worth, I think, you know, we're still not excused. I mean, there was a decision to code, you know, how many happen, you know, how many exceed 60 days anyway. You know, to my knowledge, we'll still get data back that'll say how many we missed, and we're not excused if it was COVID related, but there's a desire to kind of track, you know, how many cases were caused by COVID. So just know that's there. Just a little maybe interesting thing. There's on page F, you know, the codes that you put in for different services that indicate, you know, the SD for SDI, all those different service options. There was previously this category of family training, counseling, and home visits was listed only for kids transitioning from Part C to Part B. But so there is this code in there, FT, family training, that can be used if, you know, that there could, so in other words, there could be an IEP service that is training to the family for something about that child that could be put into the IEP. And the reason for that is actually family training and even family counseling, that word is in there, and that's kind of a heavy term. But IDEA, you know, forever has said that that can be a service under IDEA, training to the family. And so this is just an acknowledgement that there's a code in Web IEP. If a district or the AA was to offer that, that actually could be a service in the IEP. So just know that that's there. And I can't help but think about, you know, with COVID going on, are we going to be seeing more consultation to families and training, you know, as far as what can you do at home? Very, very possibly. But the intention here was just to put a code in there, just acknowledging that that could be an IDEA service training. Otherwise, yeah, there were just some general editing items in the procedures, and some things added in there that I think will just kind of flow kind of naturally. So here I've gone 15 minutes longer than I thought I would. Are there any? I think we need to wrap up pretty quickly here, but any burning questions? I have a couple of our unanswered questions that I've written down here that we will find out our best answers for. Are there any others that we maybe need to add to our list?
Ron, this is Amy, and a parent can choose to dual enroll at any time. There's not like an open enrollment date. They can choose at any time.
Yes, a very great question. Unlike open enrollment that has that for most grades, you know, that March 1st deadline, which was extended for the virtual situation this summer. But no, homeschooling does not have a parent can wake up in January 1st and say, I'm going to homeschool tomorrow, and they can turn their form in. So,
okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Ron, this is Carrie. Quick question on the evaluations. For those that were initial evaluations that were open in the spring, is there any guidance on what our timeline is for finishing them?
As soon as possible and practical.
Right. And I was just making sure, because I mean, we've been talking like,
Yeah.
what happens if they get quarantined, or what happens if we get, like all that. Yes.
Yeah. And no, it's just, you know, there is that coding in Web IEP where, you know, and that, the guidance back in March, April, before we knew a lot about how this is all going to play out, it was just like, hey, we don't think we can do these. So sometimes we're just going to say hold. And now, and when quite a few of you are going to be involved in that virtual evaluation training tomorrow. I mean, now we're at a place saying, we're going to have some strange situations, and we're going to do the best we can to proceed with evaluations, even when we have virtual and hybrid going on. But the ones that were left open, that was planned, back with what we knew back in March and April. It would just be the idea of we're going to complete those as soon as we can. And if we do exceed 60 days because of COVID, we'll code them that way. We technically still get dinged for that, but it's a way of tracking, how many cases where that happened for a very logical reason. So, yeah. Others? Well, I appreciate your patience with me going long and joining here today. I would I may record the one on the 26th because I may have a few more answers on that one. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But also going back to this, so this original slide deck where we were going through the I3. If you would, and this would be, if you would go into the slide deck that's under that, remember it's under the site update. So, I'm just navigating right from the site. At the end of this, remember we said this is something that people could do on their own. There is a little survey to complete if you've taken this training, and it's we're not counting. If you would fill out the survey, we'd appreciate it. At the state level, they're just kind of tracking who is taking this training, how many, where are they from, and that'll give some information to us. So if you would be so kind to go in there and do that survey, just saying that you completed the training, which you would, if you were doing this on your own, you might do that as well. But this will just give the state some data on, who participated in this I3 overview, where they were from, what groups they're working with, and so forth. So if you would do that, that would be appreciated. Otherwise, I think we'll call it an afternoon. Thanks for joining in today. I know things are probably fast and furious for all of you. So thanks again, and we'll I'll research those questions and we'll get some information out on that.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.